First off, welcome to everybody to the Chapters Committee meeting. Welcome to all of you that are attending in person and to everybody that we've got on the phone. I think Salim has confirmed that we've got 18 out of the 19 chapters that had indicated they will be dialing in, so that is great to hear. Thanks again, everybody, particularly those folks that are on the West Coast, that this is a little bit earlier for than for the rest of us. My name is John Lozano. I'm the current chair of the Chapters Committee for the National Alumni Board. Just as a quick refresher for everybody, particularly folks on the phone that maybe don't tune into these meetings every time we have them. So the goal of the Chapters Committee, or the mission, is essentially we're here to provide a support system to the chapter leadership in basically in allowing them to do their work in engaging alumni in their local area. So we're here for you, for the benefit of you guys at the chapter level. We'd love to hear feedback from you. Salim is obviously the point of contact. If there are things we can and should be doing that will help you out, please let us know. And having said that, we have a program today that we've developed with the Alumni Office that essentially a program. We've got 4 volunteers that are going to be helping out, sharing ideas with all of us on ways to help increase attendance at our local chapter events. We know that there is a ton of time and effort that goes into putting these events on, and I think the point of the program today is really just to brainstorm, to come up with ideas as to how we can make the return on that time and investment pay off in terms of generating more folks to attend the events. Before going on much further, I did want to turn it over to Salim because he has a few comments as well on the program. So Salim, please take it away.
Thank you, John, and thank you everybody who are on the call and here in the room. Just a very simple message I would like all of you to take home, and I'm trying to make it very simple. In this world, I'm emphasizing in this world, people are competing for others' time and attention. It's a global problem. We all are in the job. And think about it. From all the chapters, we do our best to put all of our resources to make an event a success. Towards the end of the day, when we have a big turnout, we feel so great. And when that doesn't happen, how bad we feel. So let us all try to be creative. Traditional methods actually not working these days. But we cannot get rid of traditional methods. We all need to combine with the new things in market, what we have in it. So let us combine, let us be creative and see what we can do together. This session is providing opportunities to brainstorm. We have 4 speakers in line, John in the middle to moderate. You will hear a lot of things. The idea behind it, this will create a good discussion, especially during the question and answer session. We may come up with something that we will all benefit from it. So that's our goal. There is no right or wrong answers for this. Let us all brainstorm together. That's it. Thank you.
And with that, before we get started, I did want to thank all 4 of our presenters today. I'll introduce them, and then again, before each of their sections, we've got Logan Ramirez from class of 2001, San Antonio chapter, and I'll give some more detail here shortly. Derek Rogers, class of 92.
Meg Meister in Albuquerque.
Gina Goodrich Balhade, class of 2008, is that right?
Balhada, yeah,
excuse
no
me,
problem.
class of 2008, and then Stephanie Weiner, class of 2011. Our first presenter is Logan Ramirez. He's been a member of the San Antonio Chapter Board for over 6 years, I believe. Chaired a number of events, has expertise in data analysis that will be helpful for the discussion, so I'll turn it over to Logan.
Okay, thanks. No, it's good. Yeah, thanks, Salim. Okay, so I do analytics for a living. This term data science has become popular. It's got a lot of different names. In the past, marketing strategy. I like the last one, the old gut feeling technique, right? When you're trying to plan an event, why are you planning an event? How, analytically, what's the decision process? And for the most part, my experience is generally it's kind of a gut feeling. There's a lot of caveats to that, for certain set events that we do regularly, et cetera. So I've been thinking about this problem, and at the end of the day, if we are stewards of the people, our alumni, that's our job, then we need to know them better. And this seems to be a common theme. The more I sit and listen to I was just walking in and grabbing coffee, and I heard the tail end of this discussion in whatever room's going on a second ago. So how do we we know our audience, right? And it's really easy to say, well, it's everybody. You take something like the Alumni, and it's this big, broad range of people. And we know we cover, 20 to, 80, 90-year-old gap. But really, what is it, right? And what is it in your area in San Antonio? So that's really what you're trying to get after. And we've got to find a way to get that data. And so going forward, the big proposal, if there was a takeaway, I think there's a way, we need to get this data easily, fast, and automated, right? And these things, from what I can tell, having worked with Salim on getting some of this data, none of those are true right now for me as a director member, right? It's not easy, it's not fast, and it's certainly not automated. So those are kind of long-term goals that I think have to be done if we want to take this seriously and improve it. Okay, so one that interested me is the location one. I know personally I like to go to events that are close. I've got 3 children, and so if it's not close, it's very disinteresting to me. So my theory here is that very simple. People will go to events that are close to where they live, right? So how does that stack up against San Antonio? So here is San Antonio, and what I did is I took San Antonio and I first overlaid where our directors are, right? And so the darker the color represents more of them as well as the number, right? So 5 of our directors live here and 2 far north. None of them live on the south side of San Antonio. That only matters if alumni don't live on the south side. They also don't live on the south side of San Antonio, so it's irrelevant. But this is how it's, where our alumni are, right? So again, kind of darker color represents a higher dense population of people within the city, right? So here we've got, all north side, and then the red line outside represents where there is a director, right? So you could sort of delegate or something, but proportionally, I was really surprised to see that our board represents the city pretty well. Yeah. So that was really surprising, but we didn't know that, right? I didn't know that going into it. It was just nice to discover that. So everybody on the board who's there right now can never roll off. It's a new, or they can't move. It's one of the two. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then I got thinking, okay, well, where were our events, right? And this is where our events in 2013 laid out. You have to ignore the title. I was copying and pasting the slide. But it keeps saying directors, but 2013 event locations, right? So again, it makes sense that personally, I'm convenient and I want to do events near me. So if I'm planning an event, I'm probably going to plan an event near me, right? Or I'm going to volunteer to host an event near me. But we've probably got to flip that and think more about where our people live, right? Because where it scales out is this past year, 92% of the events we did marketed 28% of the San Antonio population, right? So we can't really complain if at best, if location matters, which again, I don't know if it does, it's just a theory here, but it matters to me. And so at best, we marketed 28%, right, of the people who live in San Antonio. And so, what do we do? I mean, first, I don't know, right? We're trying to walk through this and solve it. There is no, one modest proposal might be to create zones, right? We kind of look at the city and then maybe create these zones. And then as we plan events, weight location heavier in events. When it comes down to well, which one do we want to do? Well, let's pick the one that's in a demographic that we haven't marketed before, right? So and then we can assign people there to sort of figure out, based on who lives in this zone. And I don't know if these are good zones. These are just an example, 3 zones. The bottom right gray one is where our events were. So you can see visually how many we missed out on, right? It came out to whatever it was, 62%, or 72%. So maybe we create zones and we start thinking about locations in these zones instead. And idea 2 might be when choosing, that was the same idea. So create these zones and then again, maybe provide a heavier weight. So, we could theoretically long-term create some kind of model that says a successful event is based on these things, and location, may or may not be weighted. But again, same thing. We don't really know if location matters because there's a lot of problems with this. Just up front, there may not be any good locations in one of these areas, right? You might pick a zone that doesn't have anywhere to have a good event, traffic conditions. So there's a lot of reasons why that won't even work at all. There may not be directors there to go to it. Again, you have to look at your board and your city and your events and lay out your map and see, do you even have someone who's willing to drive there? How do we figure that out? So anyway, I've listed a bunch of problems that came to mind for me here, but in all this is just location, right? So there's a whole bunch of other metrics that we have that Salim garnered and gave to me, right? So children, number of San Antonio with children, marital status, gender, age ranges, right? Most people down here well, it's focused, but 60 plus, 50 plus, right? Unknown is our biggest category. So a big swag in the data here is definitely
29, yeah.
unknown. And that's true of all this. I mean, the with children one, it says yes and it says no or unknown. So fundamentally, I mean, even all of this aside, there's still a data collecting problem, right? We don't have good data. So it's the best we can do with what we have. With what we have is okay, and none of it's fast, automated, or easy to get to, right? So we got to solve all those if we're going to take any of this seriously. And then we got to start. But my point is we don't think like this, right? In the events I've been to, this isn't an upfront thinking, and it's a problem I see everywhere. I see it in my professional job, and so anyway. But it's one that if we're going to take seriously, we have to find a way to start working on that. Anyway, that's any questions, thoughts, premise? I think it's all I had.
Cool. In addition to the three elements, easy, fast, automated, I think accuracy is an important element. So maybe
Sure. Yeah.
getting the data, but also getting it in, right? So
Yeah.
it has to be easy. I find that maybe half of our data is accurate just knowing that they're actually in. I'm in San Diego, so we statistically have about 160 people theoretically in San Diego, but half of it is people that have moved to other towns, and then half of it is people that haven't registered. So it's still 160, it's just the wrong people.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to, that needs to be solved.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, but that's the data integrity problem.
Yes.
When I work on projects at work all the time, it's like we want to do this great thing, but let's see if the data's good. If the data's not good, there's no sense to do anything else.
Yeah.
So there's a good caveat. I totally agree. Accuracy, to me, that's more like a fundamental one. And I like what you said, getting it in at the end as well. I had a point, I didn't talk about it, but the zip code thing, we could measure that. If location matters, well, let's see who attends events.
Yeah.
Right? It'd be really easy to, it's really easy to assess that.
Yep.
If we just looked at who attended and their zip code as it relates to this thing, right? There might be some magic radius, and we can say, hey, people come at 7.2 miles, right? But but we're not looking at that stuff. So yeah, we've got to get it in. On the front end, then we got to measure it on the back end, and those are sort of assumed when you do analytics. And I don't know how well we do either of those. So.
Thanks, Logan.
I was going to say, one of the tricks that Carol and I are noticing as we travel to chapter cities right now, and we have all of this data, because it's a self-reporting database, if Salim puts his data in and I put my data in, he might put it in one way, I might put it another way. And the reason you get so high a number of no age is, if you don't want to put your age in, you don't put your age in. I'm not sure exactly how to get the data in there, except to make it mandatory.
But don't you put the class when
Well,
you
that doesn't tell
graduated?
me, but I don't put, well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. See, nothing is
Some.
mandatory in the way that we
Doesn't
input the
the
data.
university have our ages? I mean, y'all have our ages, right?
Yeah.
But you tend not to put the data in. You ask me to put it in myself. That's what's causing
Right.
this.
But the big question, though, I mean, I still think is these are all problems, but where do we discuss these, and how do we come up with solutions of them? Right? There's all kinds. We can sit and create problems all day long, but where are we going to solve these? And sitting down and have a forum and discuss them and present.
I think just in the interest of time, and making sure we allow everybody their time to speak, we'll move on. And then if there are other questions, we can handle them towards the end of the program. Thanks again,
You bet.
Logan. Next up, Derek Rogers, class of '92, as I mentioned, member of the San Antonio chapter board for, I think, 4-ish years, maybe longer.
4-ish.
Probably
works.
Successful event chair, and he's going to be discussing how we can effectively use planning guides.
Well, so my goal here is to really talk about what we already have established and then try and elaborate upon what we have. Where I started with this is the cookbook for the alumni events, which is located on the web, and since I understand people are on the phone and won't always see this, I'm going to read it. It's http://web.trinity.edu/x8034.xml. Okay, for the people on the phone, I hope you got that. It's on the screen here, and you guys can go to the website and probably track this down. In fact, if you type in cookbook for alumni events, you'll find it. This is a 10-page document that really has been provided to the alumni. It's been part of the handbook for a long period of time. It probably hasn't been updated in all that long, mostly because we can't design every event according to a cookie cutter type of structure. Every event has to have its own sort of personality. You need to have your own type of planning that goes into it. You need to ask, but there are some very fundamental questions that the cookbook is excellent at addressing for us. And so I wanted to just go through these. There's the pre-planning checklist that is in there. This is identifying all of the issues that you may encounter so that you can then plan accordingly. This is putting it in the front end where you're going about and trying to schedule whatever it is that you've decided to do, whether it's based on your locations or whatnot. What events are you looking to do, and then figuring out the best way to pull these off, particularly when they're new events. Then we have like a scheduling timeline that is also part of the cookbook, and that is spacing out your preparedness so you avoid the last minute hassles. I think there will always be last minute hassles because you never can predict everything that's going to go wrong with your event, whether it's weather related, whether it's location related, or whether it's a Spurs championship that's going to fall on the same night as your event and then destroy your traffic downtown. Hey, you just didn't know that that was going to happen, but hell, it's a great experience nonetheless. We all can talk about the next day. So then you have the final item there is the day of the event tip sheet. And these are really the tips that you need to look at just as you're going through to make sure that you've kind of dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's for the day of the event. So talking about these a little bit more on a itemized list here. Scouting the event is probably the hardest thing to do. I think once you've identified whatever event you're going to have, you've got to figure out what it is that you're going to need for that audience at that particular event. Now, if you're talking about having speakers there, what are we going to need to address? We're going to need to have audio-visual support. Are we going to have introductions being made? Who's going to be, who's the speaker going to be? So you need to identify the speaker, give them the introductions, find volunteers to do those introductions. When somebody's doing the introductions, you need to have somebody else manning the front door, so you're hosting the event. And then trying to gather your information from all of the participants who are there, so that we can then fill in the data metrics that Logan referred to. Part of those logistics are just simple, parking, transportation. How long is it going to take to get there? Is that going to be an additional charge for your parking? Then is the location suitable for whatever event that you're trying to do? You're going to have different planning preparations when you're having a 100-person event versus a 20-person event versus a 500-person event. Or if it's an active event and you're doing a bunch of travel, different preparations are going to go into all of this. All of this is probably being discussed, or at least being opened up at your planning meetings within your every local chapter. But it doesn't always get, we talk, at least in our planning sessions, we have some pie in the sky type of dreams, but we say this is what we're going to do and this is what how we're going to go about doing it. And then we have the difficult task of actually making them come to fruition. So what we're talking about here really is that type of planning. The budgeting is another important component in conferring with the Alumni Association, figuring out where our dollars are going to come from, what it is we're going to be charging for each one of these events. Again, this goes back to what is your event, how is it you're planning your event, what are you putting on for the event? If we're going to have food, are we going to have hors d'oeuvres, or are we going to have a full sit-down dinner? If you're having a bar, is it going to be a cash bar, sodas free? What kind of provisions are we going to be making for that? And then there's the issues of making it happen. And I know we have other people here who are going to be talking about the advertising and publicizing of these events. So I'll kind of gloss over that. But those are where the rubber really hits the road, and making sure that everything, excuse me.
I think a plane is going on.
Trying to get it, making sure that everything comes off at the end. So here's a little bit of a scheduling timeline. This is built off of what we have already within the cookbook, but it is just kind of simply put out there, for really a bigger event, or it could be used as a template for your event, but it's also scalable. So you have to, again, depending on the size, the details that are required for your event, how long you're going to have to do this. Generally speaking, we're looking like at a 3-month window to get a good event pulled off. So we're looking at getting your coordination put together with everybody 3 months ahead of time. That's setting the date, so you have an opportunity to then get all of your participants in line, your location scoped out, your coordination with the Alumni Association. 9 to 11 weeks, we're identifying and reserving the location, evaluating the costs and the projected attendance, and doing all of the advertising, figuring out this timing of how and where and when we're going to be pushing this. From then, we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks out. Okay, you've already talked to where you're going to be having this event. Now, let's go ahead, make your reservations, getting the marketing going, and confirming volunteers. The staffing needs is one of the items that often is the most dynamic and problematic in your events, because everybody's a volunteer. And everybody that's volunteering may have other commitments, whether they be family commitments or work commitments, and they get taken out of town. So now you're going to have a little bit of flexibility, have backup people in place, making sure that they can then step in at the last moment when you get spurs traffic and the people that are supposed to be making it to your event can't. Last 4 weeks, last month of this is when you're trying to finalize your head counts, confirm all the details, and then reviewing the day of details and making sure all of that sort of information gets put together. Again, this isn't any magic to these dates. It's really more of a guideline. So when you need to have something put together and you need to look at it, if you space these things out appropriately, you'll be able to try and put it together smoothly at the end. Finally, I'm just talking about the day of event tip sheets. These is really just confirmation of everything that you've been putting together here. Arriving earlier than your earliest participants. That's almost impossible to do in some of these events. So we get people that show up like an hour before they're going to be and then you're tied up when you're thinking that you're going to be setting up the table and getting the name tags all put out on the tables and getting all of this put together. And now you've got one of your guests there, and so you're trying to play a little bit of host. And now you've thrown yourself off, and you're not trying to be rude to the person who's there, but you say, yeah, I really got to get this other stuff done because we got more people coming. That's the biggest component, I think, of these. Identifying your on-site contact is the other one that I think is a big. If you know you have a contact out there who's going to be hosting at a restaurant, if the manager is going to be a different manager than the one you've been talking to because you've been talking to the nighttime manager and it's a daytime manager, they need to be on the same page. They may not be on the same page. So talking to that person, making sure that they are all going to be fulfilling your expectations. If there's music in the room and you don't want music in the room, can they turn it down? These types of things are just, you don't want those to be your last minute hassles and you get when you're there. This is all attending to the details. The hosting and introductions, this is again, getting with your volunteers and assigning your roles as and when, who's going to be handling what. If you're the event chair and you're going to be introducing somebody at your event, if it's a speaker, you're getting up there to introduce them. There may be your late people who are arriving, so we have to have somebody still manning the door who can, gather all of the good metrics for you, introduce them, and play host. Wrapping it up, that's thanking everybody there, making sure that, again, that you try and gather some of the additional metrics that we're all looking for so that we can then plan better events, and then evaluating the event. And this is really the wrap up. Trying to do this, everybody knows, what's polite. I've got my daughter sending out, thank you notes for all the graduation announcements and stuff now. If she waits 2 weeks to send out a thank you note, is that too long? I think so, but she doesn't seem to think so. But trying to do that and appropriately timed. Thanking your speaker, whether it's getting them a gift, getting them out, making an announcement, submitting your receipts for reimbursement to more of the logistics aspects. Recognizing your event and by getting your pictures in so that we can then publicize the fact that you did a wonderful event. Then preparing and submitting your evaluation so that we can then look at it and make sure that we have gathered the information again and we then store it for posterity's sake. And then passing it on to the next class, the next generation, the next group, the next planning session that you might have. All of these are really kind of straightforward, more reminders for everybody here. I don't have any great solutions to tell you. There's a better way of doing this because I don't think that every event is the same, and you can't do this on one structure or another. I'm happy to hear if anybody out here has some way of doing it that we haven't considered.
I do have one tip for maybe breaking your early birds, is that you put them to work. Because sometimes if you put them to work, they won't be early birds the next time.
That's a pretty good one.
That was my thought. If you're there an hour earlier, volunteer.
The only ones I don't make early birds are the in-farm, so.
There you go.
Good work.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Move this table.
Anything else? All right.
Thank you very much. I like there were a lot of good takeaways, but the one thing or one of the things that stuck out there was the making sure that you have backup in mind for an event just in case things do happen, as everybody knows. Next up, Gina, class of 2008, the Associate Director for Creative Communication at Trinity here. She's going to be offering suggestions on how to write effective event descriptions for web-based marketing.
All right. So we probably all learned in 5th grade-ish the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. So I'm kind of just going to be talking about those a little bit, but how they can pertain to your event. So you've got your event planned, you've got the idea in your mind, and now we're going to go through that, I think, 6 to 8 weeks beforehand, start doing some of the advertising for it. So keeping in mind what Celine said about people's attention spans, think about how long you want to spend on an email like this and then cut it in half. People's attention spans really do tend to get shorter the more emails they have to read, the more text messages or Facebook messages that come through to their inboxes. So whatever you think might be a really decently lengthy email event blurb, cut that in half and I think you'll be safe. So let's start with who. So this is a question of not only who is going to be at the event, but who the event is for and who's going to be planning the event. So you want to make sure to include all those kinds of who's within your event blurb. So who's talking or who's sponsoring the event? Is there somebody special that you want to call out that you might think will drive more traffic there? What? So what is going to happen? But not just what is going to happen. What makes that special? What makes it different? And what makes people want to come? What's going to drive that traffic there? When? Okay. I'm sorry if this seems elementary, but I want to caution folks that I have received emails before that say something like this: Friday, June 21st. It's Saturday, June 21st. And so if people don't know, I mean, seriously, you've all received emails like this where you don't know, is it Friday or is it June 21st? So beware the typo, double check your times, double check your dates, and double check day of the week versus date of the month. Or triple check, I guess that's it. Okay. Where? So we might all end up taking for granted that people will know where these events are. But it could be really helpful, especially in a digital platform, to link to a map of the event. So, the event is at Laurie Auditorium. Well, some folks might not quite remember where that is. So if you can provide as much information within a link as possible, it lets you get away with writing where, Laurie Auditorium, but the link will suggest that there's more information to follow. And most importantly, why? So why do you want people to attend these events? Why do you want people to dedicate their super precious time to your event instead of to something else? Think about this one really carefully and make sure you go back through the first 4 questions and identify, again, that who you want to get there, and where and what you want them to do. And that can really help you formulate the answer to the why. So as most news writers would hate me for saying, promote the sizzle and not the steak. So everyone can get the steak. The steak is, a decent steak and it's cooked the way you want it, and etc. But if you promote the sizzle, you promote the something that's really special about the event. you'll be able to kind of entice interest a little more that way. So if you start with some creative language, think about what makes the event, what makes people want to come to an event? Is it the fact that there is a speaker? Or is it the fact that this speaker did something cool? Is it a fact that it's a party? Or is it a fact that there's a party that's for people like me that's going to have these really fun things going on? So if you think about it in terms of how people will gauge interest instead of just the fact that they're interested, you know, create very creative and sizzling language.
Calling out my event.
Oh, sorry.
So
Salim, you said these were safe. I changed it a little bit. The same would go for imagery. So here's
flip me on the sizzle on the picture. All right.
So here would be a stake image where here's literally a picture of the event. It's kind of snoozy. But over here on the sizzle, we have smiling faces.
Oh,
we
I
have
know
people
him.
that we have people that are clearly having fun, and we have people that other people can identify with. They can see themselves there smiling and having a good time. Another thing to include extras would be links within your text, not just to the maps, but I have an example here, a link to a Facebook album, Fellow Young Alumni. So this could be the link to last year's Facebook pictures, where people can go through and see how fun the event was. I have a link to the Tycoon Flats website. So while many people may or may not remember Flats, it's always a good reminder to see, oh yeah, I remember that place. I'd love to go back there. And then a link to the event information on the alumni.trinity.edu portal. So that way you can actually click there to learn more about the event and sign up.
Can we speak to that one real quick?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, I do this professionally as well. I link to the Yelp site, but I always go and check the Yelp first, because if it's got negative reviews, I will not link to it. I'll make people go search it themselves, because if I click on it, it's like a 2-star place, I'm automatically not going to the event. So if it's good, I would put the Tycoon Flats Yelp site in addition to maybe their own, so you can see what people are reading and things like that.
I would ask why the 2-star venue was selected in the first place. Also.
Yeah, that's true.
Usually cost or something
Just
like that.
Or the fact that it's flats. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Or Google has some pretty good reviews sometimes too. Yeah. So I put it all together in this little event blurb here, and I just kind of took what we saw in the last slides. But all together as a big package, you want to be people to be able to be interested enough to go find out more, and then of course to attend. So there, sorry, can't see. All those links in there were from the previous slides. They would open if you were on an email in a new window. All right, that's it.
Cool. That was great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. And then our last presenter, Stephanie, class of 2011, serves on the National Capital Area Chapter Board as Communications Chair.
Sorry.
And she's going to be giving us some suggestions on how to write effective event blurbs for social media.
So you are going to see quite a bit of overlap with the previous one, but that's good because you want to keep all of these points in mind when you're writing this suite of marketing advertising blurbs that you're going to be sending out to your alumni. So I kind of wanted to get a sense of who in the room manages your chapter's social media pages. So that might be Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You are an admin on this page. A couple of people. Has anybody written a blurb for these pages or been asked to, but they're not an admin? Everybody, okay.
Everybody, each chair writes their own.
Okay, awesome. So I just wanted to get a sense of that. So the main problem that I see, and I'm very guilty of doing it when I first became an alumni and was getting involved, is whatever you're sending out in an email, copy, pasting, just dropping that into your Facebook event. Just not even thinking about the platform at all and just saying, oh, well, I've already written this amazing email. Someone's very excited, they're speeding up. I've written this amazing email, and this is going to be perfect for Facebook. Maybe so, if you followed all these wonderful tips and you're selling the sizzle and not the steak, you can certainly use the same language, but make sure you're writing for the platform. Because so many people are not going to read past, on Facebook, 250 words. It automatically gives you a C more and an ellipsis. So I'd say, even with that email, once you cut that in half, cut that in half, and then that's what you want to aim for in a social media blurb. And then, of course, always linking to a site for more information. Give them a teaser. Let them see, oh, there's something exciting going on. I want to learn more. And then they can get more information by clicking on the link. So I wanted to go over a couple of just like very quick tips. So I like this KISS. Keep it short, silly. I would say keep it short and fun, but that doesn't spell anything. But essentially, when you're on Facebook, and I'm going to talk about Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn as platforms for talking with alumni, since those are the main channels we are sending out messages. I choose to follow my National Capital Area alumni group on Facebook. I choose to get notifications. I do not want to see spammy things coming up onto my wall. I typically wouldn't want to see things that are like maybe asking me to like fundraise. I would get very frustrated by those things. So when I see a blurb where there's something fun going on and exciting, and they're maybe like once or twice a month, I'm more likely to engage with that content because I don't feel overwhelmed, I don't feel obligated, and it's something that I've elected to receive, and it's not, like you were talking about, people get a ton of emails and they don't want to read through them. It's something that it's a short, quick thing that they can see and engage with in that way. So keep it short, silly, simple is another thing to do, and sell the steak, not the sizzle. Or sell the sizzle, not the steak. And always asking, like, why should I attend? Like, if I'm the alumni, I may be planning it, so why do I want the alumni to attend? But as an alumni, why should I attend? What am I going to get out of it? So for Facebook, a couple of things, and there's a handout that you guys can grab afterwards if you want to have all these tips for reference. So when available, always tag the venue where the event is going to take place. And this allows people to go see their Facebook page, get their address, get more information. The event section typically will populate this if you're tagging their company page and bring this information in. And I would also say identify your all-stars. Who are people that come to a lot of events? Can we tag them in the invitation to say, okay, John Doe's coming to this event, who else is coming? And some people are like, oh, I really love him. He was a great time at the last event. Use their clout to get more people excited and to see who else they can interact with when they come to this event. So definitely tag people, touch base with them beforehand to make sure they're actually going to come. That's the caveat to that. But I would also use this to say, like, maybe making some transformational targets. So maybe I say, I know there are 3 new alumni that came to my area and I haven't seen them at any events. So I might do some digging on Facebook to say who, as an older alumni, might know them or be from the same town in Texas they're from, and I can ask them to reach out to that person and kind of, be an all-star and an advocate for this event to get them to come out. So if you don't have the ability to tag a person, and it's creepy because you haven't met them before, but you know that they should be there and that they'd have fun, just do some talking with your all-stars and say, hey, do you know this person? Can you reach out to them? What can we do to get these young alumni at events? Also creating friendly competition in your language too. So when you're doing your planning, if you come up with, say, we've got a little bit of a budget to do, if it's drinks or appetizers or some sort of prize, saying something like the decade with the most alumni attendance gets a free round or gets a free, if it's a happy hour, I'm assuming. Give some sort of competitive incentive to get people engaged and excited. And so I'm going to call other people that I know graduated. Well, for me, there's only 3 or 4 years of people that I can call and say, hey, this is really awesome. We have an opportunity to get together and really represent our class, our group from Trinity. Let's all go down to wherever the venue is. So certainly with Facebook, tagging, and like I said, making the alumni be the advocates and really, not just making one person responsible, but help doing some crowdsourcing to help get the word out and working with getting everybody there. Another thing that I think is really helpful to think of is that your event blurbs don't just need to be copy-based. we've got a wonderful cover image on Facebook that you can do some images as well. So we recently redid the National Capitol one, where it's a DC skyline and we have the Trinity logo over it. And it looks like super beautiful and I love it. But I'm thinking that every time we have a really big event, let's like use that space as like advertising space. Let's do a blurb. We can use images from previous events to say, hey, this was last year's event. Here's some smiling faces. It was super fun. And just date, location, find more, and like maybe a link to find more information from the Trinity event, alumni event space. So remembering to use your visual and your opportunity to do more text-based posts to work together. For Twitter, I don't know how many of you guys are on Twitter, and I think that's one of the most underutilized ways we reach out to alumni, understandably so, because not everybody is on it as much as they would be on Facebook. But just a couple of things if you do want to venture out, because I think it's worth trying a lot of different platforms, see where you get the most engagement, and then if you say, hey, this is Twitter, then really focus your energies on that. Because initially it might seem like you're cannibalizing efforts if you're like, I'm doing email, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all these different things. But if you can do broad efforts, figure out what's working, and then hone in on that platform, you're meeting your alumni where they are, and you just need to figure out where that is. So I would advocate throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. So Twitter recently updated their, in the past couple of months, their layout. So now there is, again, very similar to Facebook, a really large prominent cover image that you can use to promote events. Alumni Weekend is just a huge one. There could be a graphic created that all of the chapters were uploading, or that's on the main Trinity U handle. You can also tag up to 10 people's handles, so this is their actual accounts. And it does not count towards the 140 character space in the tweets. So this is something where they're getting a notification that they've been pinged on a tweet, essentially, that is content relevant to them. So you're letting people know publicly without their name being included, if that makes sense. And that's really nice, because like I said, 140 characters. Really drives it home to keep it short and silly, going back to that. There's also a really nice site called TweetBite. So it's on the handout that you guys can pick out, but it essentially is a link that you can include in any of your tweets that you send out, and it takes people to a page where you can write out, you can include the full email copy or anything else, and people can RSVP on that platform. It's getting a little bit separate. Like if you want people to definitely RSVP on the Trinity's website, I would say maybe don't split it off. But if it's a more informal event that you just want to have something nice where people can see who else is going, again, trying to see if anybody's responding to your invitations on Twitter, it's a really great way. You can brand it and put images up. It's a shortened URL that only takes up 11 characters in your 140 spaces for tweets. So I think that's been really successful, and I know I use that at work, and we get more response from that for certain events than our email marketing pitches we send out. So that's been interesting to see. And then one other thing I'll say for Twitter is if it's a larger, more national event, we might consider doing hashtags, which I'm sure most people are familiar. They are overused in a lot of situations, but if we had one that was used, like let's say for all events and didn't change, and we just used it like if it was in a volunteer event and it was like Trinity Alumni Care, or Trinity Alum Care, Trinity Cares. And we use that whenever we have some sort of national volunteer weekend to really get the entire like Trinity alumni community across, from East to West Coast and internationally, whoever's involved, engaged, excited. You can share pictures, you can share video, you can tweet out. So that starts with the marketing, but then it can lead into actual engagement during the event. And then after the event, you can get analytics to see how many people were participating. You can identify people that were participating to like call them out and maybe get their help for future events, because you say, hey, like John was really active in California, and I've never met him before. I'm over in DC, but maybe we can work together. Hi. So that's just something that definitely on a larger scale for smaller events, don't waste your time with it. Unless you have, like for us, if we just had like Trinity DC alum, one thing that you use for all of your events, don't make new ones for every event, because it's definitely overkill for that. LinkedIn, well I didn't put one for LinkedIn, because this is very short and sweet. So LinkedIn don't put anything on there unless it is volunteer related or professional development. People aren't gonna, like, I don't know about you guys, but I like to really keep my LinkedIn separate from professional and personal. But if it's a volunteer event, LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to say like, hey, I participated in, the Trinity National Alumni Weekend volunteer event, tagging different things. So that's something that people can be proud of to list. So use LinkedIn definitely as a platform when you're marketing those types of events. And the language that you would send out on the email could be adapted very closely for that, because people, like I said, it's a little bit more formal but still short and fun. The Sizzle is in there, but you're getting a little bit more information than you're going to send out in a Facebook post or a tweet. So those are some of the main things that I wanted to talk about with different platforms. There are so many more things that you guys can be doing on them, but again, I would encourage you to just try all the different platforms using these different tactics for each and see how your alumni are engaging, and then identify which platform they're on and which is the most successful that you can really invest time in, and use that as a complement to the more traditional methods that you might be engaging. And I think there's also really great power in the whole wrap-up too. So after the event, posting pictures. Instagram is really fun for that. I've been posting pictures since I've been here called Trinity, oh my gosh, like perspectives. And I'm saying like, this wasn't here when I was here last time. This is great, I would have used this. So sharing pictures, and you can use the same hashtag across all of these different platforms. And there are different like Hootsuite and other sorts of tools that will track these like hashtags across different platforms and provide you analytics. That's not the only one, but just one to think of off the top of head. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful, and that everyone comes to your events and has an amazing time.
Well, thank you guys again, we appreciate it. And then actually, we'll take I think we're actually doing really well on time, so if we have questions, and I do want to give folks on the line an opportunity to chime in as well. Maybe we'll start with any the questions that come from folks that are tuning in by phone on the webinar.
Are you guys, hi, this is Brittany from Northern California. Are you guys going to be sending out these decks after this, or is there any way we could get them
Yes.
or presenting? That would be more helpful, I think.
Sure, Brittany, this is Salim. What we plan to do is we will post an edited version of the whole presentation, including the videos that you are probably not able to view it. It will be up on the website where we have the links to the previous training session. That is one. And then when we do this, I can certainly send a link to that to all chapter presidents, and then you can share it with your board. You will hear.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think it would have been helpful to have them while they were going over them on the call as opposed to after.
Okay. Yes.
Just for future feedback.
Sure.
And not to put you guys on the spot, I'm curious, would you be willing to, folks have questions, they want to reach out to you specifically, is it okay for us to send out contact info?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. The speakers are available for your follow-up questions also.
Just put my phone number as Salim's.
Good.
Anybody out in the audience here, questions, comments, suggestions? Yes.
I would like to add, this is Salim again for the callers. I would like to add just a couple of thoughts very quickly to complement all the speakers they highlighted. And starting from Logan and continuing Derek, Gina, and Stephanie, what they said, it is easily can be, they are easily implementable. How? The only way we can do that is we need to have an emotional attachment with your events. Think about the timing. Very intentionally, we have chosen this time for this training session. We are doing it right before you all gather for your planning meetings. All the new ideas that you have now gathered, you'll be able to discuss it at the planning meeting so that we think differently. Think about the traditional way we have been doing it. In the past, when your event, the chapter volunteers even come like about 6 weeks or 4 weeks in advance, they ask me, Salim, may I get a copy of the last year's email, last year's invitation? Sure enough, I forward that. What happens? It's a continuation of the same language over and over again. What Gina and Stephanie emphasized, we need to put Sizzle in it. That is very, we need to really be mindful when event chairs are sending blurbs to me. And what I personally do is look at the blurb, see whether it is meeting the university communications standards, like certain way we present this stuff. I take a look at it. I do not go in detail to change abruptly unless I see there's a great need. So make my job easier. Please take a look at what Gina presented as a sample towards the end of her presentation. This is the way, I cannot say the template per se. We all are creative writers, but you know what we do. An institution is reflected wonderfully when it comes out of a team. If you have all the chapter presidents can make a precedence, can make a kind of a practice that when you send a draft, identify someone who is strong in communications. You probably have noticed some of the chapters have established a position called communication chair. We started with San Antonio, then followed by the Houston, now followed by the NCA chapter. Those who are lucky to have a larger board members, they probably can afford to have a position, but it is someone who feels strong enough in writing, and especially this style, can volunteer for that position and say, well, I'll be happy to take a look at it. And then when that thing comes to me, my job is easier. So let us try to do that. And then my second thought is very important. We need to have, I probably said it, the psychological, emotional attachment to our events. When the chapter presidents are assigning events during the planning meeting, please be mindful. Do not give events to everyone who is raising hands one after another to take, I will do it, I will do it. Planning meeting is the forum where everybody is super excited. But some of them, they are not aware of the time constraints they may eventually have. I would not assign anybody with more than 2 events per year. Why? Because of this reason. We all are professional. We know, Derek has emphasized the time cycle on the handbook, the tips. If you own an event and you know use the word my event is coming up, you have an emotional attachment. You want to do it differently to make it successful. Do not use the traditional method always. University sent an email invitation, reminders. That is not going to work. What is the idea behind it? Generally, for smaller chapters, probably we are going to send it to the entire list. Then if you own an event, you know this event is targeted towards kind of a population, a mid-age population. That is the ideal for this event. Reach out to the board who falls into that category of the age group. Ask that person, hey John or Stacy, could you please personalize this event to this age group that alumni office is sending a list for this target group, and say, hey, I will be there, or our classmates will be there. Don't feel you will be the only one. You will not be lost. Something like personal note. People do not like strangers. We all know about it. They would like to feel welcome when they see. If we can provide this kind of thoughts in our personalizing approach, your event is going to be successful, will be different. I can guarantee you. So please keep this in mind. Emotional attachment, do it differently. Stephanie even mentioned when we do it for the social media platforms, cut to half of your email invitation. So let us all follow this. Perfect timing. I wish you the best, and let me know if I can be of, or all the speakers can be of more service to you. That's
Just
all.
real quick before we run totally out of time to touch on something that Derek said. If you're doing an event for the first time, please reach out to Salim or Christine. We've got all the documentation from past events, so maybe if your chapter is doing something that another chapter has already done, we've got budgets, we've got blurbs, and we've got the feedback forms most importantly. And those are all filed away, and so if please tell your chapter members that as they're organizing events, sports related, the wine tours, things on campus, things like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to the staff that has those events on file.
Thank you.
To use as a template.
Yes.
John, and for those on the phone, this is Dave Manson. Interesting point to follow up on Logan's direct where you are, where you want to run the event. What we're finding out as we go chapter to chapter, it's just as important where they work as where they live.
Yes.
And depending on when your event is, be sensitive to, if I'm going to do, we are often doing lunches, and so it doesn't really matter where they live, it matters where they work, and that data is there. It's got the same problems we were talking about, but to the extent that your event matters to where they work, then that makes a big difference.
We can provide that.
I would echo that point because I live in I work in DC, but I live up in Maryland, and I think there are a lot of the alumni that are in Virginia. So I think all of the events that happen downtown after work are more successful, and also around metros. So depending if you're in a really urban space, looking at local transportation and using those as your hubs, making a decision maybe.
Yeah.
Also, if you've got, I like to go home after work, if I'm gonna go to an event, I like to go home, get freshened up, get my husband, and then go to an event. So events that start at 5:30 might be great, but I also want to have, if it just lasts from 5:30 to 6:30 or 5:30 to 7, that's not enough time for me to get home, get him and get back. So I'm gonna go, not gonna go to that event. Whereas if it started even an hour later, I would definitely go because I've got enough time to get him, and then we can go do something afterwards.
Yeah. And we can try many different things just to see how it works.
If you look at the old records that you online or wherever you have them, a lot of times you can keep from making the same mistake again.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, because if they've already done this and it wasn't successful this way, then best you look at whatever they've got suggested and try it a different way.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people are more honest in the online feedback than they are in person. Everybody was telling you,
Yes.
oh yeah, no, that was great, and then you'll find out that maybe the venue was absolutely terrible, or the
Yes.
food selection was
Yes.
not. And so that's valuable feedback for the next time.
I think a key component of follow-up is it's incumbent upon the host of the event and the other volunteers to promote the next event. So you've already got somebody that's shown that they're going to participate, so when they're there, it's like, hey, I'm so glad you came. By the way, here's a card, or you may have seen it on Facebook, but just a reminder, 3 weeks from now, we're having this other deal, I'd love to see you there again, or something of that nature, and bring some friends. So it's just make that personal connection and then remind them that there's something else going on. That helps your fellow chairs of their events. And if you're hosting the next event, it's probably a good idea to come to the event before yours to run around and promote it.
Yes. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
Very good.
exactly right.
Well, thanks again, guys, for your participation, everybody on the phone and here in person. And actually, one before we move on, Celine, this will, when we send out the presentations, there will be a link to how the replay and how folks can access it. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else you
No,
wanted on this?
and just for the callers, we have one formality, and we'll be talking about it, and that's not part of the training. So feel free to stay on the call to hear a few exciting things that John will be talking about it. Or if you have something to do, you might want to, feel free to leave. Yeah, so thank you again, and please get in touch with me. This is the very important month for me because I will be providing all kinds of support that you will need to plan a good planning calendar. So yes, I am ready.
And actually, Celine, before folks drop off, maybe we'll take a brief detour on the agenda. The chapter event of the year, and this was an agenda item. Just wanted to spend a few minutes because we're past the point of the deadline. But just to confirm, so as a reminder, we have the chapter of the year award that is handed out. It's very metrics based, formulaic based. So it's diversity of attendance. There's a lot of different I guess, metrics that go into it. A couple of years ago, we also put in place a chapter event of the year, and it was intended to have some more flexibility in terms of how that was awarded.
Send their ballots.
You know, essentially things like how did the event promote Trinity in that particular area? What sort of relative impact did it have? And so I just wanted to give a brief update on where we are with that. We passed the deadline for submitting nominations for that. I believe we received 4 nominations. I had written down all the chapters that submitted, and I'm forgetting Colorado, Fort Worth, Houston, and San Antonio all had submissions. And Celine, we just quickly remind us of the timeline. So there's I guess before we do that, there's a chapter awards subcommittee, which is myself,
Yes.
James, Amy, that will receive those nominations later in the year, and that will, the award will be announced in August, but if you'll remind us of the timeline.
Yeah, that's the time. In fact, in August, they will be meeting and discussing all this thing and finalize and come up with a decision that this is the chapter who got this award. And the president will make that announcement during the alumni weekend, during his state of the university address. And that's very prestigious. We will be, and this particular award John is mentioning is the first time we'll be
Yes,
starting
that's right.
giving it. So stay tuned. 4 nominations we received, and that's a good start.
And then I think the next and probably final item that we are going to make it to on the agenda is some exciting news. So we have 2 chapters in formation, West Texas and Albuquerque, that have applied to be approved as formal chapters. We've got John and Jill Grace here in the back from West Texas. And I think Scott Webster on the phone from Albuquerque, is that right?
Yes.
I'm on the phone.
Yes.
It was.
Catherine first.
And just, I won't go through all the details, but in terms of, so what, what is it, what are the criteria for becoming a formal chapter? And Celine, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's essentially, I think the 2 big ones are that it's a chapter in formation. You've actually formed a group of volunteers that will serve as a board. You've shown some history of actually having organized and hosted events over the past few years.
Yes.
We knew we were going to run short on time for the committee meeting, so I did have Celine distribute the materials that both Albuquerque and West Texas sent in, and I think it's clear, if anybody had a chance to look through those, that they both certainly exceeded all of the criteria that,
You are correct.
That we need to have met to be instated as a formal chapter. So do we need to take a formal vote on each, or how does this
Of the
work?
committee
So-
members, of those who serve, to say yes to it, to motion it to the general body for a vote this afternoon.
So will someone make that motion, and we'll
Second.
can we do both of them at once? We'll say both West Texas and Albuquerque. Everybody in favor that's on the committee?
Aye.
Anybody
Fantastic.
opposed?
Ooh!
Congratulations.
Congratulations!
That's great, thank you very much.
That was a Scott.
That is exciting news. That's a good way to wrap up the chapters committee meeting. Again, and I wanted to emphasize before we move on to the next meeting, again, the chapters committee, we're here for those of you at the chapters level. We want to hear from you in terms of suggestions, what we are doing or need to be doing to better help you, because that's why we're here. And so feel free to, I'm going to volunteer to funnel any of those comments or questions or suggestions through Salim. He will obviously be able to distribute that to the rest of us. Also encourage anybody that's not, to the extent that you're involved in the National Alumni Board going forward and you're interested in serving on chapters, please make yourselves known. And with that, I think we will go ahead and conclude the meeting. Thanks again, everybody, for participating.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.